Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Welcome to another episode of Living in the West, a series of episodes where we look into the lives of the Muslim minorities living in the West. In previous episodes, we've discussed the importance of this topic, the permissibility of this large number of Muslims living in the West. And now we're looking into the vision of the personal life of the Muslim and the community level of the Muslims. I have with me today Sheikh Haytham Al-Haddad, from the Muslim Research and Development Foundation in the UK. It's an organisation and a think tank which looks into helping the Muslims in the West. Assalamu alaikum.
Alaikum assalam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
Sheikh Haytham, we discussed the vision of the community in terms of what it needs to establish in the West, what it needs to push for is the terminology we used. We spoke about education and the importance of education, and whether it's at home, whether it's in the mosque, whether it's to do with the private schools or state schools. Are there any points in terms of education that the community level needs to develop and push?
بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم وأصلي وأسلم على المبعوث رحمة للعالمين سيد الأولين والآخرين وإمام الأنبياء والمرسلين نبينا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين. In terms of education, we said that the Muslim community should work hard towards official recognition for the Muslim community to be officially recognized, as we said. Now, on the educational level, we have to make sure that our children are able to receive the Islamic education or are able to manifest their religion in the public sphere, in the educational sphere. Now, this includes our children being able to observe hijab. Again, proper hijab. And now I know that different countries deal with this issue of hijab differently. But I would like to give the example of Britain, and in particular certain parts of London. Do you know that, for example, the jilbab, the loose garment, jilbab, Allah Jalla wa Ala says in the Quran, يا أيها النبي قل لأزواجك وبناتك ونساء المؤمنين يدنين عليهن من جلابيبهن. جلابيبهن. So the jilbab is the loose garment that cover the body of the female. In some places in London, jilbab is considered to be one of the official uniforms in state schools. And this is in particular in East London or in some places in East London. How could Muslims achieve that? First of all, because the majority of the population there is Muslims. And this reminds us of the point that we have mentioned before, maybe we have not covered it fully, the issue of internal hijrah.
Yes.
When we spoke about external hijrah, and we haven't discussed in details the issue of internal hijrah. We said that the internal hijrah, to move to a city or a place or a country where there is a majority of Muslim population. Why? Because it will be much easier for you to implement your Islam, to manifest your religion. And this is one of the examples.
So this is the moving from one place to another place
within the country itself.
To improve your practice or the ability to practice your faith.
Yes.
Okay.
And this is a typical example. For example, in East London, the ability of Muslims to manifest their religion is far bigger than the ability of them manifesting their religion in other places. And as I said, in some schools in East London, it is the jilbab is officially recognized as a uniform, as a state uniform. In many other schools in London, especially where there is a high population of Muslims, the shirwal and qamis is recognized as an official uniform. Shirwal and qamis might be an acceptable jilbab for young children, because if it is really loose enough. It might be acceptable. And here I would like to say and to re-emphasize the point that there are some details, fiqh details or technical details that we cannot solve. We cannot solve in this episode or in this series of episodes. And as individuals, these details have to be discussed by the fiqh councils, and we have to have collective ijtihad. So let us not assume, I'm appealing to the brothers and sisters watching this program, not to take some of these details as the end result or the end answer for these questions, because situations vary from one city to another city. Situation varies from one environment to another environment. So this element, okay, that is the ability of sisters or the ability of female children to practice hijab in the schools, it is an important element. Let us take the example of universities. There are many female Muslims going to universities. I don't want to discuss the permissibility of Muslim girls going to universities in a mixed environment, and this education is not a needed education, is not considered to be a necessity, and many of those educations can be fulfilled by other types of education. Let us not get into that. Again, it needs a collective ijtihad to discuss it. But what I am saying is that in many universities, Muslim students, Muslim female students, are unable to wear proper hijab. The Muslim community should make sure that those students are able to practice this faith. Let me give you again the British experience, that in the universities, most of the British universities, sisters are, or student females are able to wear proper hijab. And imagine in some universities, some students are wearing abaya, the very loose black garment. I'm not talking about this is the sunnah. Again, I'm not talking about this is not the sunnah, but at least this the manifestation of Islam in this way. It is a very big advantage. And that's why when some British universities try to stop women, Muslim students from wearing niqab, the veil, they were thinking carefully, because they have seen that the Muslim female students are manifesting their religion and are demanding for that. So it will be very difficult for the authorities to stop them from manifesting their religion. And they were discussing the issue of niqab only. It is true that in some universities, for example, again I'm giving the British example, that women or female students are unable to wear hijab or wear niqab, and in some other universities they can wear it, but the university has the liability or has the ability to stop those Muslim female students from wearing the niqab. Now this experience, I am sharing this experience with the audience because it is a very important experience. Many Muslim communities in different European countries and American countries, they claim that they are unable to practice this. They are unable to give their female students in universities the ability to wear proper hijab. And we are telling them that we are in Europe, and this is Britain, and this is London, and we could achieve that. Yes, London maybe is different. Britain is, more tolerant towards Muslims. But if you work hard towards that, if you are united, and if you don't compromise your religion, you will be able to achieve that. We need to work hard.
Okay, now So that's the educational part. Is there anything left in the educational part that you want to discuss?
Another thing with regards to education, the issue of providing halal food for the children.
We did touch upon it slightly, but the establishment of this.
The establishment, the official recognition, again, the official recognition on a national level, which means that by law, firms or establishments that have a significant number of Muslim students have or has to provide halal meals for their students. We should achieve that. And in Britain, again, let me give the example of Britain because it is really a very good example. By law, if any institution has a significant number of followers of any faith, then that institution is bound to fulfill the needs, the basic needs for those followers to practice their religion.
Okay, so
that's why in Britain, for example, we don't have a problem with this issue of halal food. And by law, they have to clarify to the parents and the children and the student, university students, whether this meal is a halal meal, whether it has pork or whether it has elements of wine.
I think this is a good evidence to say that a community which has been working for some time on one particular issue can work its way. It's just that the community needs to work on all levels.
Exactly.
Are there any other official parts of a Muslim or the community level that needs to be pushed forward now? We spoke about education, we spoke about other acts in terms of workplace, the right to practice freely. Are there any other points that we need to discuss?
Just let me mention one more element in terms of education because it is really a very important, which is the sex education. This is a very important one. And in many countries, the sex education is compulsory during the primary schools, during the primary time. And this sex education, some of it is okay, other parts are not okay. For example, the younger children, when you expose them, and let us be here a little bit open because we are talking about this important issue. When you expose them to the private parts of the other gender and how the private parts look like, then this is a sensitive issue. Now, many governments are pushing for this, and many governments are making this obligatory. Now, in Britain, they are trying to push this. And even if you look to the sex education in the secondary stage, it goes beyond that. Maybe sex education within the during the primary period, we can look at it in more details, and we may overlook certain elements. But definitely, sex education during the secondary period is quite dangerous. Why? Because imagine, it teaches female students how to use condom in order to protect themselves against sexual infection or sexual diseases. And in some schools, they applied this, and many non-Muslims were opposing this because they said that it is quite embarrassing for our girls to learn how to use these things. But the government is trying to push for that. So this issue, we have to work hard in order to protect our children from receiving such education. And we have also to work hard with those non-Muslim organizations who are trying to protect the morality and the basic family values within the society.
So this protection, the sexual education, how to provide this protection, the community really has to provide a solution, rather not stop this. It's providing the solution. Is that what you're saying, Sheikh? Like that, the community has to be proactive in looking into this and providing a solution, because sometimes it's not about being reactive.
Exactly.
It's about being positively reactive.
Exactly. And that's why, you see, Yeah, this point is a very important point, because we need thinkers, we need intellectuals, we need specialists in every sphere, and we need organizations specialized in working in special fields. For example, we need certain organizations to focus on schools, schooling, not Muslim schools but state schools, and to monitor what has been provided to our children to study. And those organizations should have the ability to provide an alternative, either providing alternative to the government, to the authorities, or suggesting other ways of dealing with the problem. Because you are right, just criticizing without providing a solution is very problematic, and it is a reactionary form, and it won't work. Because in many cases they will say, okay, what do you suggest? And then we don't have anything to offer, and this is a problem itself.
Jazakallah khair. We'll touch upon the topic of education again when we return. We're going to take a short break. This is Living in the West.
Closing the Gap.
Why closing the gap?
In this program, Sheikh Yusuf Estes and Omar Dunlap are going to discuss how to bridge the gap between peoples of different cultures and orientations, the gap between males and females, Muslims and non-Muslims, the East and the West.
Human beings feel like that they're being slighted one way or the other. The gap between the youth and the elders, the gap between various status in the work field and education, and then trying to provide solutions for these particular problems.
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Welcome back to Living in the West. Just before the break, Sheikh, we spoke about the educational importance for the community to push forward, official recognition of certain parts. What other parts of the education system do we need to finalize on, Sheikh?
Okay. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Again, the issue of the uniform. Okay. Many people think that the issue of uniform is limited to girls at early stages of education, but this issue of uniform is continues, okay, all the way until the period of university. We touched upon that, but let me mention some other examples that are really important to understand this narrative. A student in medical colleges, okay, they are allowed to wear certain uniforms. For example, they are not allowed to wear a loose clothes, and they have to wear trousers. This is one thing. Recently, for example, in Britain, and somebody told me that it is the law in some of the European countries that if the students if the medical students attending some laboratories or some certain classes, clinical classes, or they are touching patients, they have to wear short sleeves clothes. Now, I don't want to discuss the legality of this issue and the technicality of this issue from an Islamic perspective, because it is well established that a woman should cover her arm, full of it. But the Muslim community should be able enough and should be dynamic enough to find solutions. And let me give this experience. Again, in Britain, the Muslim community or the chaplains working in some of these trusts or the hospitals, they suggested that the women can wear very long, loose clothes all the way just below the knee. It looks like a shirwal, but it is little bit more loose shirwal.
It's looser, sorry.
And qamis, okay, and it is little bit longer than the normal qamis. Now, I'm not saying that this is the perfect solution. I'm not saying that this is perfectly legitimate, but I'm saying that we have to be creative in finding solutions for the problems that we are facing. Okay? The other thing is the Muslim doctors in Britain, they were arguing whether wearing short sleeves is really mandatory from a medical point of view, because they say that the claim that long sleeves may bring infection is not supported by any medical evidence.
No clinical evidence supports this fact.
Yes, okay. And they said if it is inevitable to wear such clothes, then why don't we recommend gloves that can cover the leaves, okay, the long leaves, and the long leaves can get into the gloves, so it will look like as if the person is wearing a short sleeves. This is another suggestion. A third suggestion was that the female students, they can wear long sleeves all the way up to 7 centimeters from the wrist, okay, which is another suggestion. And they said this can be covered, or this, if it is mandatory, can be uncovered during certain times, and women are allowed to cover their full, okay, hands later on. Now, this again might be an acceptable solution. Again, I'm not saying that this is perfectly all right, but this might be an acceptable solution. Now, here, this way of thinking is very important. Why? Because you might, by suggesting certain solutions, you might include other aspects of your religion in this recommendation or this proposal. For example, this issue of wearing just very long, okay, sleeves, and just the sleeve should end a few centimeters before the
beginning of the wrist.
Beginning of the wrist. It suggests that those who are observing Islamic faith are allowed to wear loose clothes covering their body elsewhere. So, from one side, you are achieving official recognition for the requirements of that faith in the public sphere.
In different agencies, different areas of society, you are now, this is de facto going to be accepted.
It is accepted not only in the public sphere, but it is accepted in the trust itself, I mean in the hospitals itself. So by law, Muslim women can wear these loose clothes in the hospital, but in certain places they should observe other alternatives.
So it's recognition without even getting recognition.
Exactly. And that's why we say we should be very creative in articulating what we want and putting proposals to suggest alternatives.
Okay, now the Sharia, in terms of allowing these principles to work, like you said, it needs fiqh committees to come together and discuss this. And you've mentioned this in several episodes. I just want you to quickly explain to me, Sheikh, why is it so important that we need to look at all of these issues in a group form? Because you keep saying that we can't go into the detail, and some people may be asking, people want to know the detail. Why is it so important that we need to have these committees to look into these areas? Yeah. Why can we not accept thinkers to come forward with their ideas and views?
Because these are considered to be elements of our religion. And only scholars need to speak about them. This is one thing. The other thing, and Allah Jalla wa Ala said clearly in the Quran, فَاسْأَلُوا أَهْلَ الذِّكْرِ إِن كُنْتُمْ لَا تَعْلَمُونَ, refer to the people of dhikr refer to the scholars. And Allah Jalla wa Ala says, وَأَطِيعُوا اللَّهَ وَأَطِيعُوا الرَّسُولَ وَأُولِي الْأَمْرِ مِنْكُمْ أُولِي الْأَمْرِ, as it is explained by the Mufassirin, that they are the scholars. Now, this is one thing. On the other hand, why do we need collective ijtihad? These issues are very sensitive and difficult. No single talib ilm or a scholar even can come up with a solution for these things. And moreover, countries vary in terms of the flexibility and tolerance towards these practices. Not only that, but the loopholes or the legal flexibility, the scholars might not be fully aware of the legal framework in order to maneuver within the legal framework. That's why in many cases we need lawyers to work alongside with the scholars. In many cases we need doctors to work along with the scholars in medical issue, because they know the situation more than the scholars. And that's why we need this collective ijtihad. And sometimes if we don't have this collective ijtihad, we might end up with individual opinions. Some people might hold strict opinions, as we mentioned in the one of the early episodes, and some people might hold very loose, compromising opinions. We need a genuine collective ijtihad.
Okay, Jazakallah Sheikh Haytham Al-Haddad from the Muslim Research and Development Foundation in the UK. Very important topic this, living in the West. We hope you join us on the next episode. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.